I've had the XH2s for about a month, and I've wanted to do this kind of a sort of a comparison video for a while now, but I just haven't been able to really organize my thoughts around it. And so I was thinking about it, and it's because I still kind of don't really know what to think of this camera. It's sort of feels like a little bit of an enigma to me. So this is not a spec by spec comparison. There's so many of those that you can find. This is more my thoughts on using both cameras, and for what it's worth, hopefully it'll help you if you're looking at both of these or you're not sure what to do. So as I distilled my thoughts here, I realized that there's kind of two main places for me where the cameras really, really diverge, and the two main reasons why I would want to shoot one over the other. And those two places are the radically different body design. I mean, the experience there is completely different. And the second place is the sensor, because the XT5 has the 40 megapixel sensor and the XH2s has the 26 megapixel stacked sensor. So for everything else that's different about these cameras, for me personally, those are the two places where I find that there's the most divergence in practical usage. So let's just talk about that for a minute. First, body design. Now, I think that the XT5 still wins out as far as the layout and the design. Probably most Fuji users are going to prefer this, but it is dependent on what you're doing. I'm a portrait photographer, so that's why I say that. Now, outside of the screen, which the XT5 does have that three-way tilt, and then on the XH2s you have a fully articulated screen that you can use for vlogging if you want to do that, or for video where you need to see the screen. That's one of the big differences, right? But more than that, it's the whole user experience working with one camera over the other. The XT5 still is giving you these dials, which I absolutely love to use. And sometimes I'll use the command dials for the aperture and the shutter speed. But 99% of the time, I find it's easy enough to adjust this. And I like seeing the numbers right in front of me. So I like the tactile nature of it. It just is more seamless for my portrait work. Now, my portrait work, no one's running around super fast generally. So there's that. But it definitely lends itself to what I feel is a more seamless kind of user experience, that the camera, I feel more connected to the camera. And it's funny because a couple of you commented similar things on one of my videos about using the XT5, and I have to agree with you. Now, that could just be because I've been using it for a few years. That's definitely part of it, but the layout really lends itself to portrait photography and street photography and concert photography that I do, which is generally in smaller concert halls. I'm not doing like rock concerts generally. It's mostly jazz and classical music and stuff like that. So it really lends itself to that. Now, I took this camera, I took the XH2s with me to Dallas, to Imaging USA, and it was the only camera I took because I said, if I take this and the XT5, I mean, I was there to present at a conference, and I knew I'd be taking a bunch of pictures, but not really. It was just kind of more like for fun. And I really liked using the XH2s as well for that, because it's set up very intuitively. So I think if you're doing a lot of video, obviously, or if you're really someone who doesn't care about dials and kind of that traditional feel and layout, like this is going to be a much more practical layout for you. One thing that I absolutely love is the grip. It's got a really deep grip, and that makes it easy to handhold, even if you're using a bulky lens. So that's really nice, and it's comfortable. The design is really comfortable. It almost feels similar to my Canon R5 in kind of the shape of the camera. It's similar to that feeling. The other thing I like about this camera is that your aperture and your shutter speed dials using the front and the rear command dial, or you can use one as an ISO, one as a shutter, and then still use your, your physical aperture dial if you have a lens with physical aperture. It's very intuitive. It's kind of a nice setup. I think for a lot of the Fuji people who've gotten into Fuji because of the traditional kind of layout, this might not be something you're going to like. Now, because I'm still using Canon products as well, like it's easy for me to go back and forth with this kind of a layout. But I still prefer this. I especially with a prime lens where I'm not being rushed. It's just so nice. So that's the first area where it's very different, right? It's the layout, it's the design. The other thing, now let's talk about the other thing I mentioned, which is the sensor. So in a way, I feel kind of spoiled with the 40 megapixel sensor now. For all of the hemming and hawing when they first released it, and people were worried about like all of this noise and grain, and you can't fit that many pixels, and which lens is going to work right with it, and this and that. I kind of just ignored all of that, and I didn't completely ignore it. I did do a couple of videos or whatever talking about that, but in my own work, like I just got the camera and I used the lenses that I've already had, and some of them are optimized, some of them aren't, and over the last few years, I've really fallen in love with the 40 megapixel sensor. So then when I look at the images from the 26 megapixel sensor, they look great. But in the studio primarily, I find that with the 40 megapixel sensor, it just gives me a little bit more to work from. And I like being able to, I'm not even cropping generally. It's got nothing even to do with cropping. It's just having a little bit more detail in the file. I guess I've just kind of gotten used to that. So now when I use a lower resolution camera, like even my XT4, which I'll still break out and use in the studio, I do see a difference there. Now, it's not something you're going to notice if you're not doing a lot of cropping and zooming in. However, it's something that I see, and that it's kind of, I prefer working with that higher megapixel at this point. And that's just, again, I know I keep saying this is, obviously it's my video, it's my own personal thoughts on it, but that's my experience with it. So which is better? There is no better in my opinion. It's just finding what works right with you. So the other thing I wanted to touch on based on all of that is the XH2, because the XH2 might be the sweet spot for those of you who want something that's a little faster, a little bit more rugged, a little bit more of a modern design, that you need that, yet you still want that higher resolution. That would be the way that I would probably go. I'm not sure how much more you're getting from the XH2s as far as performance in practical terms. But maybe some of you who have the XH2s and the XH2, I know you're out there, you can enlighten us in the comments section. But for the kind of work that I do, I think that the XH2, if I was going to get a modern Fuji body, and I've used the XH2 before as well, and really have enjoyed that camera as well, probably for me, I'm going to go with the higher resolution and sacrifice a little bit on that performance end. And that's just where I'm at with it. Now, if you haven't checked out my last video, I talk about using the XT5 at a recent photo shoot I did at Jazz at Lincoln Center in New York, and kind of it was some of my mistakes going into that shoot, but it all worked out well. And when I look at the results from the XT5, I'm just thrilled with it. I'm really happy with it, and I think that at the end of the day, it's all about finding the piece of gear that you feel the most connected with. This camera, for me, it just has a very close connection for creating great images. And I'll tell you another little story kind of similar to that. I did another shoot at a studio in Manhattan, at a recording studio, and I was able to use a GFX 100S2 to take some really cool portraits at this studio of the musicians. And that camera is really amazing, and I'm gonna do some content on it, and I'll show you the images when I'm able to release them and all of that. However, I did some post portraits with that, and then I just took this with my 50 millimeter lens, and it just felt like home. So there's something to be said for that. Now, should you buy one or the other? I don't know. It's like there's a lot of factors. And one thing I'll tell you is you shouldn't decide one way or another based just on this one video. So if you're considering both of these cameras, take what I've just said and take it as a grain of salt in your salt accumulation and watch a bunch of videos and then decide what's right for you, because everyone's use case is going to be different. But if you are a portrait photographer, if you do a lot of portraiture in studio, on location, that kind of stuff, that's where I'm coming from. So maybe that will resonate a little bit stronger with you. However, that's all I have for you now. I hope that you found this video helpful in some way. And definitely remember to subscribe, check out my channel. I appreciate all the positive feedback I got on the last video. And I'm going to try and do more content in that direction of just talking about shooting and actually using the gear instead of just being reviewing gear. So thank you for all the feedback there. Help me get to 100,000 subscribers, everyone. Like, I have a long way to go, but I know I'm going to make it one day. So please help me out. Check out my sponsors, especially B&H Photo. B&H Photo have been so good to me. They're always supporting small creators. So check out those links in my description. If you buy anything through those links, they'll know that you got there through my video. So that helps me as well. And that's all I got for you today. Here's wishing you an awesome day. Go out and take some great pictures. I'll see you next time. Peace.